Welcome to The Explainer. We're about to take a deep dive into one of the most expressive instruments ever made, the violin. We're going to peel back all those layers of wood and varnish and really get into the hidden physics and, well, the astonishing biology that actually makes it sing.
So let's start with the big question. How does a player take a bow, draw it across a string, and make a sound that can, actually bring us to tears? Now, if you're picturing a string just vibrating back and forth in some kind of simple, elegant wave, you are in for a bit of a surprise. The reality is, well, it's way more chaotic and, frankly, a lot more interesting than that.
In fact, that beautiful sustained note that you hear, it's not born from a smooth, clean oscillation at all. No, it's actually the result of this incredibly rapid, almost violent cycle of the string sticking to the bow and then slipping away, a process that's happening hundreds of times a second, right on the very edge of chaos. That's right. You could say that playing the violin is less about creating a sound and more about managing a constant, high-speed crisis. It's this incredible balancing act between the instrument's own physics and the chaotic energy being pumped into it by the bow. All right, let's start our journey by zooming in. And I mean way in, right down to the microscopic point where the horsehair on the bow meets the string, because this is where all the magic and all the violence really begins. So the basic sound of a bowed string isn't some gentle wave, it's actually a pretty violent cycle called Helmholtz motion. See, instead of the whole string moving back and forth at once, a sharp little kink or corner gets created, and that kink zips up and down the string, releasing a burst of energy, of sound, with every single trip. And that Helmholtz motion, it's all powered by this little two-step dance called the stick-slip cycle, happening hundreds of times every single second. First, you've got the stick phase. The sticky rosin on the bow hair grabs the string and literally pulls it, building up tension and potential energy. Then, the string's own tension just gets to be too much. It overcomes that friction and it snaps back. That's the slip, releasing that kink of energy we hear as sound. Stick, slip, over and over and over again. And this is the most crucial point to get. A violinist isn't making the string vibrate in the way you might think. What they're really doing is masterfully creating the perfect physical conditions, just the right amount of pressure, just the right speed, to let this stick-slip cycle happen all on its own. They're not the source of the vibration, they're the facilitator of a natural physical phenomenon. And believe me, it is an incredibly delicate balance. Players are constantly walking this tightrope between two catastrophic failures. Physicists can even map it out on something called a Schelling diagram. If you press too hard, you hit the raucous limit. You just crush the cycle and get this horrible crunching sound. But if you press too lightly, you're at the surface limit. The bow doesn't grip, and all you get is this thin whistling sound. The perfect tone, it lives right on that razor's edge in between. So, if the physics are that chaotic, how is it even managed? Well, that takes us to something even more impressive, the human brain, which in this case is acting like a biological supercomputer. I mean, think about it. If tiny shifts in pressure or speed can lead to total sonic failure, how on earth does a musician's brain and body keep everything perfectly in sync, especially when they're flying through fast, complex music? Well, the answer is this mind-blowingly fast biomechanical feedback loop. It goes like this. The brain tells a finger where to go on the string. The ear immediately hears the pitch that's created. And then, within milliseconds, the brain detects any tiny error, if the note is a little sharp or a little flat, and sends a corrective signal back to the hand. For a pro, this is happening so fast and it's so practiced, it's all completely subconscious. And what's really fascinating here is that in tune isn't just one fixed frequency, like on a piano. Violinists use something called dynamic intonation. This means they're constantly making these subtle adjustments to the pitch of notes depending on the musical context, maybe sharpening a leading tone to make a melody more exciting, or slightly flattening a note in a chord to make the harmony ring out with this perfect, beautiful clarity. Okay, so we've looked at the physics of the string and the biology of the player. Now let's zoom out a bit further, into the world of culture, and see how this one single instrument can have two completely different musical souls. So what is the difference between a violin and a fiddle? Physically, absolutely nothing. They are the exact same wooden box. The difference isn't in the instrument, it's in the artistic philosophy behind it. Is your goal to produce a pure, balanced, beautiful tone? Or is your goal to create a powerful, infectious, rhythmic groove? And this table just lays it out so clearly. The classical violinist is usually looking for a round, even tone, often with continuous vibrato. They tend to draw the bow horizontally, right, to create these long singing melodies. But the bluegrass fiddler, they want a sound that cuts through the band, something rhythmic. So they often use very little vibrato and focus on more vertical bowing techniques. And one of the best examples of this has to be a technique called the chop. Instead of drawing the bow across the string, the fiddler actually drops it vertically onto the strings, creating this percussive sound. This completely hacks the instrument's physics. It turns it from this melodic, singing thing into a rhythmic engine. The fiddle literally becomes the snare drum and kick drum that drives the whole band. It's amazing.
So we've gone from physics to biology to culture. For our final step, let's look at the ultimate purpose of this incredibly complex system, its profound, almost ancient, connection to us.
Now, here's the part that really gets me. It turns out the reason a violin sounds so much like a human voice is because it's physically built to do so. I mean, scientific research has actually shown that the acoustics of a great violin filter sound in almost the exact same way a human singer's vocal tract does. It's like an external larynx. And this analogy just goes deeper and deeper. The body of the violin acts like our mouth and throat, shaping the vowel of the sound. And the bow arm, well, that functions as the lungs, providing the breath that gives life and phrasing and emotion to the music. So when you really put it all together, the violent physics of the string, the subconscious lightning-fast dance of the musician's mind, and the instrument's uncanny ability to mimic our own voice, you really have to wonder, when we listen to a violin, are we just hearing music, or are we actually hearing the sound of the human spirit itself, given a voice in wood and string?